Then an unpleasant thought crept up my mind. We were still in autumn, yes, but that school year was bound to end eventually, and with that our time together. Was it wise to start something like that, knowing beforehand that it wouldn't last forever? Inside my chest, my heart ached with a dull and lasting pain. I spied Rick's face, and his features showed a sadness that I could fully understand. You're thinking about your family and your fiancé, don't you? He had his face on my shoulder. Stop reading me so well. Tell me what the letter said. The last one you got. He cited. Just the usual rubbish, urging me to get the top grades and write to Suzanne more often. The face of the kind girl popped on my mind and made me feel slightly guilty. Rick stared at me and squeezed my hand. She knows I don't want that marriage. She told me when she visited here last month. I didn't tell her, but she guessed on her own. She's a clever one, isn't she? Yes, but it's not if she could refuse the engagement. She told me to be at least friends, and really, I don't mind being friends with her. She's a nice girl, but thinking further than that, ugh. I held his middle and squeezed him tight, desperate and reciprocated, stroking my hair and my back in reassuring circles. A week had passed by the weekend arrived again, but this time we were to hand in a group task and Monty stayed at the school so we could work together on it. So we spent a busy weekend shut in the library and study room or our bedrooms, and sadly there was no way to find any time alone with Rick and me. On Monday I got dressed in the morning with a depressed side, stealing glances at Rick, who was changing into his uniform by my side, and wondered when we would find the chance to be alone again. Then, while I was grabbing my clean laundry to put it inside my wardrobe, I noticed a piece of paper resting between two of my shirts. Curious, I opened it at once, concealing it from my mates, turning my back to them. Meet me in the 3rd floor this afternoon after class. My eyes darted immediately to Rick. About time. He had finally found a place where we could meet without anyone else at sight. Would he be up to repeat what we did this previous week? My cheeks felt suddenly hot, and I had to take my eyes off of Rick by tucking the note inside my trousers pocket. I finished my morning course with a silly grin plastered on my face. You're cheerful, Alex. You're cheerful today, Alex. You're usually still half dead at this time in the morning. I just feel today is going to be a great day, that's all. I smiled at Rick, who cast me a puzzled look before smiling back. I couldn't wait for the afternoon. Our lessons that day were boring and endless, but of course they finally came to an end. I dashed to the corridor with the books and waited for Rick. He came out the classroom just a minute later, smiling widely at me. Ha, you're all energy today. You could have gone directly to the study room, Thor. The study room, so we could have the table close to the window? Ah, yes, study room, of course. Who cared about studying right then? Slightly annoyed, I watched his face in search of any trace in him being joking. He looked back at me with curiosity. Alright, so he wasn't joking. Rick really wanted to go to the study room and spend the afternoon there. Disappointing crept inside my mind. Had he forgotten our date? Monty and Damien came out of our classroom and approached us. Hey mates, so let's leave our books in the bedroom and meet in the study room in 10 minutes? I should go to the toilet first, so save a spot for me. And another one for me, please. I have something to do, but I promise I will join you in half an hour as much. Where are you going? Don't skip us again, you hear me? Damien sighed loudly and rolled his eyes. I said I will, so don't make me repeat myself, Ginger. Later, little bird, Rick. And he turned on his heels and started walking fast. Monty glared at his back. He can be so infuriating. I agreed. Rick squeezed my arm and I looked back at him. We smiled to each other and I decided the rest of the work could be damned. I'm going to take our table then. Mind to leave my books in our bedroom, Alex? Ah, yes, of course. Are we going too? See you shortly. Our friend left, heading for the toilets, and I picked the books Rick didn't want to use that afternoon and accommodated them on top of mine. He took the chance of stroking my hand by helping me to do so. So, was he going to save the table for us for and then when our friends met us in the study room, we would sneak away to have our promised alone time. I felt a bit confused about our plans. What if Rick had forgotten about the note? That couldn't be right. I felt tempted to show him the note to remind him of our date, but wouldn't he think I was rather dumb if he was just playing along the whole time? Okay. Die Szene schreit ja schon förmlich nach Bad End, weil Rick vergisst es ganz sicher nicht. Und wenn wir jetzt hochgehen in diesen 3. Stock, werden wir mit Sicherheit umgebracht. Deswegen würde ich diese Szene kurz speichern, damit wir uns später für das andere entscheiden können. Aber ich würde sagen, show him the note. Weil er ja anscheinend wirklich keine Ahnung hat, dass wir uns angeblich mit ihm treffen sollen. Sozusagen würden wir ihn ja daran erinnern, aber nachdem ich mir denken kann, dass das mit ihm sowieso nichts zu tun hat, entscheide ich mich für show him the note. Wir machen später dann die andere Entscheidung. So, kurzes Speichern. So. I slid a piece of paper discreetly on his hand. Rick Fromm glanced up at me and then opened the note. His cheeks turned a deep shade of pink when he read it. He folded it again at once and looked aside with a tiny shy smile on his lips. You didn't need to write a note. You couldn't just say it. I looked at him with those squinted eyes, confused. What? I got this note from you this morning. His expression blanked at hearing my words. Alex, I didn't write this. This note is not mine. I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't find the words. The implications were too shocking. There wasn't any other schoolmate who would have the chance to leave a piece of paper between my clothes that only left. Arriving at the same conclusion as me, Rick suddenly grabbed my forearm and started walking towards the end of the corridor. Let's tie Monty and go up the 3rd floor together. We will see who wanted to speak to you. The 3 of us climbed up the 3rd floor without wasting a moment. We tried to be as silent as we could once we reached the last flight of the main stairs. I'm sure it's Sarah the maid. Perhaps she wants to talk in private. It could be, yes. We've seen soon enough. We were speaking in whispers. I looked around the main corridor of the floor. Even with daylight, the place was desolate and soulless. The wood panels on the wall were rotten, and there were huge black dampness stains everywhere. I started to tremble from cold as soon as we stepped in the damp place. I can see no one. Sighing, Rick and Monty started to walk along the empty corridors and reluctantly followed them. Perhaps she's just late. Let's wait for a while. Suddenly, we heard steps at our back, hitting the main stairs. Someone was running, and it seemed the steps of more than one person. We ran back along the corridor until we reached the stairs, and then we climbed down 2 steps at a time. I saw clearly 2 silhouettes through the staircase hollow, but it could be more than 2 easily. Anyway, when we arrived to the 2nd floor landing, the silhouettes had vanished. We stopped for a moment to quiet our ragged breath, then proceed to search everywhere and ask every student we met. Nobody had seen 2 or more men running down the stairs. I can't believe it, man. They can't have vanished in thin air, right? Rick hummed in agreement, deep in thought. It's obvious they know the school pretty well. Come on, guys, let's go back to our bedroom and leave our stuff and prepare for the study room. God knows where they must be right now. But Rick is right. All we know is that our men work in the school, that's for sure. But who they are? Monty linked his arm with mine, very serious. Well, we protect you, Alex. Nobody will hurt you while we are around. Rick nodded and looked at me with concern. I grinned at them, but my smile was small and flickering. I couldn't help but feel deeply uneasy right then. Less than a week after that, Rick and I found a familiar face roaming by the corridor outside our bedroom. Sarah? Oh, hello. How odd seeing you here. Monty, who was walking behind us, caught up quickly and studied the distressed face of the girl. Actually, I was looking for you guys. Can we talk for a minute? Her eyes darted to Monty. Ah, this is Monty, our other roommate. You can talk in front of him. He won't tell anything. I know all about you, anyway. Monty offered Sarah one of his cheerful and reassuring smiles. She seemed guarded and distrustful, but it wasn't news. I guided her to our bedroom, and we all went in. Sarah looked around with downcast eyes, and Monty rushed to offer her chair. My friends and I sat down as well, not wanting to intimidate her further. Damien is not here? He was behind us a moment ago. He'll come in a minute, I guess. As if on cue, the door opened and Damien appeared in the threshold. He looked as surprised as us to find Sarah there, but he masked it quickly with a smile. Sarah, good afternoon. To what do we owe this pleasure? The girl fidgeted on her chair, still not daring to look at us. She finally squinted at Damien and spoke to him. I've come to warn you. Take Alex out of the school tonight. What? What do you mean? She glanced quickly at me, but looked away at once and resumed staring at the floor. Pretend you're ill and leave the school now. They are planning something against you tonight, so you are in danger if you stay here. She stood up and ran to the door, but Damien was standing in her way and had no trouble stopping her, grabbing her forearm gently and pressing his back against the door to keep it closed. Hold on, you can't say something like that and then run away without further explanations. Let me go. I won't say anything else. I came closer until I was right in front of her. She refused to look at me, but I backed her away. Please, Sarah, I need to know. Do you understand it, right? Who is the one who wants to harm me, and why? I can't. Sorry, I can't. Her face was strained, and she was pursing her lips in a tight line and thought she was about to burst crying. I really didn't know how to deal with her. I looked around at my friends asking for help. Rick was already by my side. We shared a quick glance, and he stepped forward, approaching Sarah. I had a moment of doubt. Rick was as shy as me. Would he really know how to cope with that situation? Wouldn't it be better if someone tactful and with more social skills like Damien or Monty took care of it? It could be our only chance to make Sarah talk, after all, and though I could deny it, I was very frightened by her words. Also, wir wären schon arschig, wenn wir jetzt nehmen würden, stop him and leave it in Damien's hands. Nachdem wir vor, weiß ich nicht, 1,5 Wochen mit ihm im Bett waren und ihm auch noch gesagt haben, ich liebe dich. Also wir speichern jetzt gleich nochmal, wir speichern die Entscheidung auch, weil ich so, glaube ich, das Gefühl habe, dass die Entscheidung auch nochmal zu einem anderen Ende führt. Ich würde jetzt einfach sagen, trust in Rick, der ist immerhin unser Freund. Also, wir nehmen Trust in Rick. Und speichern nochmal. Na? So. I watched as Rick walked towards the girl. He looked nervous, but offered me a reassuring little smile all the same. He kneeled in front of the girl and took her hands in his. Sarah gasped, startled, and shook his hand off. She started to look at us, one after the another, with suspicious and alert eyes. Rick stood up again and stepped back, raising his hands with his palms towards her in a surrender gesture. Don't be scared of us, please. Sarah frowned and seemed to regain her calm again. I'm not, so please let me go right now. I will start yelling for help. Whoa, calm down. We only want to see what's happening here and what's about to happen. That seemed to catch her attention again, and she focused on Damien with a questioned look. If Alex is hurt or murdered or will get caught, do you think your friends will protect you? Think carefully about it, about the kind of people they are. You want me to betray them? But that won't happen. I trust them. So far, they have been good to me. Yes, but the kind of people tends to get rid of the weaker members of the party when they are not useful anymore. Though I found out you spoke to us and they will get rid of you for good. No! The girl covered her face, scared, and if I hadn't been so tense myself, I would have certainly felt bad for her. You know it's true. They will finish you, or they will sell you on the police. Nice option, right? You will end your days in prison for murder or attempted murder. But I wouldn't ever hurt the boy. I'm not a murderer. Tell it to the police, or... Her eyes peeked from between her fingers. Or... You can speak now. We avoid Alex being attacked again. Those criminals end in prison or on the gallows, and you go out of this with only a small punishment. I can't! I can't! She was close to tears again. Monty stepped closer and added, Do you prefer to be murdered then? Do you really want Alex to die? She sobbed in silence at that, and Monty advanced with a chair and placed it by her side. She sat down, looking defeated. I know this boy is innocent. He hasn't done anything to deserve being murdered or harmed. You boys have been very kind to me. This is why I couldn't allow it to happen. I had to warn you. But we need to know more. We need enough evidence to go to the police and stop them for real. She looked at Damien, who was towering over her, and her face was a mask of panic. But they will kill me if I go to the police. They won't. They will be imprisoned and you will be free. You can allow with your life as if nothing had happened. She rubbed her temples, obviously trying to decide what to do. Please, Sarah. I don't even know how might want to murder me. I felt close to tears myself. The girl looked at me at last and her face softened. She reached for one of my hands and squeezed it. Poor innocent kid. You really have no idea. She let go of me and sighed it. I didn't want to come to this. I never wanted to harm anyone. I'm not like that. Then how did you end in this situation? She made a long thoughtful silence before she started talking. He was the only one who would take me in when my husband kicked me out. It was night and winter. I had made a stupid mistake and none of my acquaintances would help me. My husband was a brute and a drunkard, but my lover wasn't any better. I knew I couldn't count on him, but I didn't expect that everybody else I knew would turn their backs on me and close their doors in my face. So when Jonathan offered to take me in, I really hadn't any other option. I knew he wasn't an honest person, but what could I do? It was that or not surviving the winter in the streets. We looked at each other, feeling somewhat guilty. I remembered Mrs. Hutchinson's word when she talked about Sarah, and I guessed it was the usual attitude she was getting everywhere. I took care of his house for a while, turning a blind eye on his night activities, but after a month he got hired along a group of mates of his. I nearly jumped, but I managed to bite my tongue. I didn't want to interrupt her. She looked at me either way. It was your aunt who hired us, boy. Miss Emily White, the widow of the late Edward White. I let my jaw fall dumbfounded. What? Aunt Emily? But why? Because of money, what else? Your uncle left you his house and almost everything he owned in his will. You didn't know that? That makes no sense. My father told me Uncle Edward let me as some of my studies, that's all. Well, he clearly didn't want to tell you the whole through yet. Are you sure about that? Why would Uncle Edward do such a thing? Damon chuckled by my side, and it wasn't a nice sound. Well, isn't it obvious? You're Uncle Edward's son. And that hack woman you called Aunt Emily certainly hates the idea. My eyes wandered from face to face, uncertain. I didn't know how to react. Was it true? They weren't playing a prank on me? That was clear, but they must have had it wrong. There was no way my father and my mother weren't my real parents. Or was there? My head ached and I started to feel a bit dizzy. They were all talking at the same time by then, but Rick suddenly shut up and took my hand. Alex, come here, let's lie you down on your bed for a while. I felt a lot better once I was in a horizontal position. Rick dragged a chair to my side and sat down close to me, for which I was glad. I listened to the rest of the story from there. Sarah's man was the gardener, and he was the masked man who attacked me that day in the woods. The other new servants were Jonathan, Evildor maids, plus a couple of them who stayed in town for further help. I'm sorry I had to hear about your family secrets from me, boy. I'm sure your parents will confirm my words once you have the chance to talk with them. I nodded. A long, calm conversation with them was overdue, it seemed. Somehow, even when I didn't really know that girl and her story was surprising, once the bewilderment had passed, I started to believe what she had told me. It was awkward and painful, but she didn't have any reason to lie to me. I had never shared a long, meaningful conversation with Uncle Edward, so I was really surprised when my father told me about this will. And about Aunt Emily, Well, it was true that she was pulled my face when she saw me, but getting to the point of wanting me dead? How could she hate me so much? Even if everything was true, as I suspected was the case, it was my fault that I was born. I didn't ask to inherit anything of all from Uncle Edward either. And now that I thought about it, it was quite a lot. Uncle Edward was loaded, nothing to do with the modest patrimony owned by my father. Well, Alex, if you're feeling alright enough, we should go to the police. I nodded. I sat up and my head still spun, but I couldn't cowardly hide behind my friends. It was time to face my life and react. Sarah, let's go to talk to the head teacher, and then we'll go with you to town and you must tell the police everything you told us, their names and my own name. She pressed her lips together, but her eyes were dry and she looked determined. She nodded and stood up. The head teacher allowed me to accompany him and Sarah to the police, where he gave our statements. The head teacher sent a telegram to my parents and they came to the school the next day. Our conversation was indeed long and painful, and sadly it confirmed Sarah's story point by point. It seems Uncle Edward had a relationship with another woman when she was already engaged to Aunt Emily, but he didn't know about my existence until 2 years later when said woman brought me to his house and left me there. My parents never knew her name. She needed to get rid of me in order to be able to work, so Uncle Edward promised to take care of me. She disappeared and didn't come back, not even once. Of course, Aunt Emily was furious at finding out about me, and she wanted to send me to an orphanage. They hadn't convinced my children, so according to my father, having to give me up broke Uncle Edward's heart. The best solution he found was that I was adopted by his elder brother, my father, who had already a bunch of children in his own, but who of course was willing to help. At this point I started my parents' faces with sadness. The head teacher had lent us his office so we could talk in peace, and we were sitting on his leather armchairs and ignoring our teacups. My poor mother sobbed, and I couldn't help it any more and rushed to hug her. "Don't cry, Mom. You two will always be my parents, no matter what." "Oh, Alex, you were the one who fed me and bathed me when I was a child, and the one who read me fairy tales and cared for me when I was ill, and Dad was the one who I could always turn to when I needed advice. Nothing has changed, don't you see?" "Of course, Alex. You know you're as much our son as our other siblings. We will always be there for you." "I know." My father came closer and I hugged him too, feeling a huge knot in my throat. As much as I feared it, in the end I had to face my aunt and Kurt. Bearing it with my father and my mother by my side made it a bit easier, but still it was shocking and painful realizing that someone hated me up to that point, and that she had been loathing me for eyes wishing I was dead. Watching and listening to her coming apart, I thought it was less the money and more her hurt pride that led her to act that way towards me. I still felt sad and horrified at listening to all the details of the case. My mother wanted to spare me that hard moment, but I wanted to hear it all. I decided that I had been overprotected enough for my entire life, so I stood at the curb with my bravest face and tried to come to terms with the truth. Once back in the school, thought I spent a whole hour just lying in Rick's arms, calming down. Everything had passed, but I doubted I would ever be trusting of other people as I was before. Not to mention that I would never feel completely safe again, even with those men and my aunt being bars. Although then, at least, I know I could rely on my friends. Thanks to them, my world had turned wider, not limited to just my family anymore, and I felt strong enough to face whatever danger life could provide in the future. With friends by my side, I could face it all. The months went by too quickly for my taste, and in thought I enjoyed my time in St. Michael's, it finally came to an end. Thanks to Rick's help, my grades were fairly good and I couldn't be more relieved. Even so, the atmosphere among my friends turned morose and gloomy at the end of the school year. We started to realize our time together was ending, and that, from next September on, we would be attending different university and having different friends. Rick and I tried to avoid talking about that and enjoy our last weeks together, but in the end, the formal closure of the academic year arrived and we couldn't avoid conversation anymore. Our families and friends were outside, sitting at decorated tables in front of garden, beautiful with reds and flowers all around, but we scurried away and met in the hall. Alex, Alex, I'm here. I looked around, checking that the hall was really empty, and took his hand in mine. I'm glad we can be alone for a moment before bidding farewell to the school with our friends. I was smiling, but he didn't return my gesture. His expression was pained, and he avoided my eyes. I gulped and turned serious as well. Rick, have you decided yet on what university you're attending? I licked my lips uneasy. Not really, but if you're definitely attending Cambridge, then I will go there as well. He let go of my hand and looked aside. Alex, about that... What happened? Rick turned to look at me then, but his eyes were hard instead of his lovely warm gaze of usual. You know perfectly well what happens. I'm getting married as soon as I finish Cambridge, and my father is expecting me to have the best grades from now on too. Oh, come on, you're the first one in our promotion. You will be the best in college as well, rest assured. He shook his head. His eyes weren't cold anymore, but instead he looked so miserable that I could barely stand looking at him. This was the end, wasn't it? It's Cambridge we are talking about. The level will be higher than in St. Michael's, and besides, Alex, I thought about this again and again, and I can't come up with any solution. Rick, no, please, this is hard for me too. Don't look at me like that, or I won't be able to say it. Then don't say it. I didn't want to beg him, and moreover, I was certain we would achieve nothing, but I had a clear idea of what he was going to say, and the bundle of nerves I had in the pit of my stomach the whole day was turning unbearable painful. We can't part without talking about it. I'm sorry, Alex, but I have come to the conclusion that we shouldn't be together in Cambridge. The dreaded words were out at last. But we could be together 5 years more. We would be living together. And what after that? Being heartbroken and sad for the rest of our lives? The longer this relationship lasts, the harder it will be for us when it finishes. 100 objections came to my mind all at once. I didn't have to finish, ever, or at least I didn't want it to. It would leave me heartbroken and sad right then, so it was too late to say that now. But as soon as I opened my mouth to speak up my mind, Rick sighed and raised his hands to stop me. I know what you're going to say, but there's more. I'm not proud of admitting this, but I'm a coward. I can't stand the idea of the gossip reaching my father's ears. I don't know how he would react, but I'm terrified beforehand. Disenchantment invaded me to hearing his words, so our situation was like that. There's nothing I can say to make you change your mind. I have no say in the matter. He flinched and looked terribly sad, and I almost regretted my harsh tone. I'm really sorry, Alex. Perhaps it would have been better if you never started it. Hot tears sprinkled at my eyes, and I couldn't help but raise my voice in anger. How can you say that? After everything we have shared, does it amount to nothing for you, or what? Of course, it's not that. It felt as if I had stabbed him, but I felt too hurt to stop then. I really thought you would be brave enough to face your father and ensure we could be together for a long time. But perhaps I was wrong, and this is not that important for you. At least not as important as it's for me. Rick's mouth was a tight line. He was biting his lips, and his eyes shone with restrained tears. I could feel mine burning my cheeks as they went down my face. Alex, please. Please what? We stood facing each other for a long and awkward silence until he shook his head. Nothing, I guess. I'm sorry for disappointing you. You're right. I should have been braver, but I'm not. I don't think I will ever face my father, but... He sobbed and cast his eyes down to the floor. But don't think so low of my feelings towards you. When I said I loved you, I wanted to be forever with you. It wasn't a lie, it's just impossible to accomplish, not in our situation. I took a step forward, trying to reach for him. Perhaps if I held him tight, it would turn out that everything was just a bad dream, and we were still happily together. Before I could touch him, thought he turned towards the door with a grimace and went out with just 2 last words before seeing each other for the last time in our lives. Goodbye, Alex. Was? Oh Mann, oh. Oh, ich dachte, wir kriegen jetzt das gute Ende. Ach, okay. Verdammt. Oh, wie traurig. Oh, das war jetzt echt traurig. Oh. Wie kriegen wir denn das gute Ende? Wo haben wir uns denn jetzt falsch entschieden? Ich weiß gerade echt nicht, wo wir uns falsch entschieden haben. Vielleicht schon an dem Tisch, als wir am Tisch saßen mit den anderen. Vielleicht hätten wir uns da nicht eine andere Idee aussuchen sollen, sondern Rick zustimmen. Aber bevor wir jetzt so weit zurückspringen, würde ich sagen, probieren wir das aus, wenn wir ihm nicht den Zettel zeigen. Dass wir hochgehen in den 3. Stock. Wir wüssten zwar, was passiert. Oh, das wäre komisch, wenn es nicht passieren würde. Würde ich sagen, wir laden da nochmal. Und gehen dann... Da müssen wir hin. Und zeigen ihm den Zettel nicht, sondern gehen alleine hoch. Halt. Das war falsch. Nein. Was? Jetzt. So, jetzt, genau. Wir zeigen ihm jetzt nicht die Notiz, sondern wir tun so, als wäre nichts und schleichen uns später einfach davon.